Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
Good morning, everybody. Have to pardon me 1 second. I'm still downloading research material that I need for next week. Morning, Martin. One more download and I promise I'll stop. I did just run into a full version of a Capone interview that I haven't seen in full before. Morning, Carol, Melissa, Jerry, Eric, Sue, Timothy, and Patty.
The torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who pervades assorted rhythms, all danceable, in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago.
Hey, Octavio. Hey, Nancy. Hey, Ann.
Greatest hit, Blue Sky.
Morning, everybody. Hey, Betsy and Diana. Hey, Vicky, Evelyn. Ba. Do, 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 do. All right. Brushing up on some material I need for next week in New York. Hey, Karina, Bridget, Heather, Keely, Lori in Michigan. Hey, Nancy. Hey, I get everybody there. Hey, Kathleen and Dory. Becky. Hey. Morning, Patricia. Hey, Nancy. Hey, Bob. Hey, Georgia. Hey, Todd over on Twitch. Hey, Julianne. Carol, weather's a little gloomy outside. We didn't get hit as hard with rain in this neighborhood as other places did. Hey, Sherlock. Hey, Bridget. Morning, Mona. Hey, Jordana. Morning, Susan. Becky, tonsil's not as worse today than yesterday, so I'm trying to take it. I might take it a little bit easier than usual today. Still wish I knew what happened with it. That's probably because I forgot to refill the humidifier last night. Hey, RLE, Southern California. Good morning, Larry. I just stumbled onto a Capone interview that I don't think I've ever seen in full before. So that's cool. It was it's from a Chicago paper that isn't digitized and is at kind of a random date. So I wouldn't have looked at the microfilm for it. Laura, yes it would. It's just tricky because this stuff is all over town. Hey, Migler. Morning, Ellen. I love Art Deco too. Hey, Heidi and Dina. Hey, Palo. Hey, Diane. Hey, Mom. Hey, Jackie. Megler, not exactly. Assume all Capone stories untrue. Hey, Dad. Get this up a bit. Well, we're going to file this under middle of the night emails that I'm not going to answer from some stranger. Hey, Beck. Hey, Luann. don't know. I've been involved in some Twitter discussions on things. Yesterday's page of Talmud, the day before, was weird debates about what counts as sex. Like if a guy falls off a roof and lands on/in a woman, does that count? If it's an accident? It seems rather a hypothetical situation. I was trying to think, well, maybe there was a tornado? So I also can't really imagine what the dude was doing naked on the roof, and I can't imagine what the woman would have been doing lying there in such a position that it was possible. Sid, yes it is, well spotted. That is the Carbide and Carbon building. No, it's not made out of carbide and carbon. Made out of green stone. Adam, well put. Well, of course the Talmud can be wild too. Hey, Kristen, have a good time in the music box? Heather, I don't know. Tornadoes being arousing would be a weird fetish, but they could theoretically blow you off of the roof and put somebody, like, have a woman, like, slide out of the tub and through the window. Just to make the conditions right for this. Sometimes the sages of the Talmud are just kind of like, you know, kids in a George Carlin routine about Catholic school. So, Father, what if you go across the international date line, but then the chaplain has a heart attack? It's exactly like that. Morning, Karen. Hey, Arlie, that should be interesting. We just did the Gold Coast tour a couple of weeks ago, but I'm thinking of ways that I could do that as an in-person. I'm also thinking I'm going to go to Rose Hill for a couple of times this week and redo the route for there.
Benny Goodman goes way back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny, Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Well, one other scenario is he was up on the roof watching her bathe, and the beauty in the moonlight overthrew him right onto her. I'd always imagine in that line he was watching Bathsheba bathe on the roof, but him being on the roof really would make more sense. I'll get well soon, Laura. Hey, Cindy. Thanks, Kathy. This is the outfit I've been putting together for my Netflix gig in a couple of weeks. Octavio, yeah, I think Saturday I won't be like 100% new or anything, but I think we'll go to some different places and maybe just leave Wilbur F's story alone and just stop promoting him. Not that I'm promoting him when I do a little jig on his grave. Morning, Carrie. But yeah, my plan is to move some things around in Rose Hill. I've been doing it pretty much the same way for a couple of years now. Thanks, Mariko. Is this coming up as more purple? I was going for purple that kind of looks pink. I mean, I'm fine with pink too, but I feel like I look better in purple. Like, hence, if I unbutton down to this purple, it is part of the Get Back outfits. That's kind of the color I'm going for. But I was all over New York, like going to Charles Tyrwhite and stuff, looking for a purple button down. It can't be done. They're just not in style this year. It reminds me of, I briefly had a gig transcribing old Johnny Carson shows. It was from 1984 during the Republican National Convention. So if you ever need a joke on the 1984 RNC, I got them locked and loaded. But Johnny and Doc were like making fun of each other's suits, saying, you know, why are you wearing a purple suit? And he said, no, this is lilac. It looks purple to me. Like, you sound like Stan Laurel. It looks purple to me. But I'm going for looking purple here. And then there's mauve. Oh yeah, happy May Day, everybody. That was a big holiday when I was a kid. Morning, Gina. We'll let Benny Goodman finish up this tune before we get started properly. Aurelia, no, the coyotes generally mind their own business. They might be dangerous for outdoor pets, but this is a big city. You shouldn't be having outdoor pets. Hey, happy birthday to Dina's fur baby. My two cats are sleeping over on the couch. You can see them back over there if you look. From 5 to 7 a.m., they played their favorite morning game, which I believe is called Horse Stampede, which is played by running back and forth as loudly as humanly possible. It's amazing just how loud they can be with their galloping. Union History Tour would be a good one, Alex. I will let Benny finish up this tune. Just got a TikTok alert. Adam S. liked your video. Well, that's ominous. Donna, that's cool.
And now Benny Goodman's arrangement of the Bugle Call Rang.
All right, let us pause the Benny Goodman. I think it's about time we get started properly here. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to Mysterious Chicago Tours. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago. I've been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. Got about a dozen Chicago history books out, including Mysterious Chicago, the book, The Smart Aleck's Guide to American History. I have very few of them set up on the deck here. The new one is called Murder Maps USA from Thames and Hudson, and this August will be Graceland Cemetery, Chicago Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. But we don't just do murder around here. We also do things like architecture, strange history. Cemetery tours are really my specialty. It's still called Mysterious Chicago because I came out of the old ghost tour business. But today we're going to do something almost that includes almost no murders. We're just going to be talking about Art Deco in Chicago. Art Deco is a style of architecture that emerged back in the 1920s. Let's start here. So in the 1910s, so over on the left here is an old Daniel Burnham building that is broadly still a Beaux-Arts style building, the style that was common in the late 19th and early 20th century with a lot of neoclassical elements, columns and stuff. But the tall windows up on top tie it into the building on the right, the Marquette Building by Holla, and Roche, which is what they called the Chicago School of Architecture. It was a little more restrained. It was still kind of based on the look of a column. It's got a base, a shaft, and a capital, just like an old Roman column, but it was a lot more restrained. It was cleaner lines. But then in the around the same time, you also had the Prairie School going around, which put a lot of emphasis on horizontal lines. Now, what we had with Art Deco is a little bit later than this. In the 1920s and 30s, you started seeing a lot more emphasis on the vertical. Streamlined verticality. Buildings were getting taller and taller. Those clean vertical lines helped to emphasize the height. We just talked about the Equitable Building in Manhattan on the grave robbing tour the other night. This was the one that was so tall in the 1910s that people got worried that it was going to start blocking out the sun too much. So they started having rules that buildings had to get narrower as they got taller. And this is the ordinance in Chicago indicating just how high a building could be before they had to start having setbacks. Now, this wasn't on the books for very long. It came in on the books really right before the Great Depression started, and building was slowed down quite a bit at that point. This is from 1923, but you don't see too many buildings that really line up with this, some of them. But through the 1920s and 1930s, we started having buildings that just had this sort of shape, not just because of the ordinance, but I think also it just fit the style. It made the building look taller to get narrower as it got taller. Now, perhaps on the New York tour guide exam, they ask a question, what is the finest example of Art Deco in New York? Frankly, I think that's kind of subjective, but it's a very weird Kafkaesque kind of test that you have to take. The answer they're looking for is the Chrysler Building. Visible right here, named after the Chrysler Company. These circular things up at the top are supposed to be like tires. Then off in the background, of course, you can see the Empire State Building, another version. One way to describe this to people is it's kind of like Superman architecture. Like you think of the Daily Planet building as it appeared in the 1940s cartoons. Gets a little bit narrower as it gets taller, that 1930s font, a lot of streamlined verticality, simple geometric art. However, the Daily News building, this is its first appearance in the comics, it was in 1942, and that's just a little bit after the Art Deco era ends. Well, one of my managers at a tour company insisted that Art Deco ended in 1929. He was kind of full of it, but still, 1940s is pretty late for Art Deco. There's a number of buildings that claim to be the inspiration for the Daily Planet building in Chicago. The one in New York is the Paramount Building, which is on Times Square, currently home to the Hard Rock Cafe, and originally the theater where Music Man had its premiere. So, this is best known as a style from New York nowadays, but we certainly had it in Chicago too. Art Deco permeated every aspect of life in the 1920s and 30s. It's in the design of clocks. It's in the design of toasters. It's in the design of coffee machines. You could see it on magazines. Like in 1930, we had the Chicagoan, which was Chicago's answer to the New Yorker. This one showing, I believe that was supposed to be specifically the Tacoma building. But really, you can see lots and lots of different skyscrapers built into the facade of this one if you look. And also, that just basic style, you see this in the drawings of people, too. They have remarkably long legs in a lot of Art Deco stylings. And in this one, you can see the Jewelers Building. You can see a little bit of the Wrigley Building off in the background, giving Chicago this electric, tall vibe. And incidentally, in the middle of this is 1931. Prohibition was still going on, so you'll see ads for things like Orange Crush Dry. This is, I imagine this probably tasted about like a San Pellegrino, but it was one of the ways that they tried to fill the gap in the liquor market for people who still wanted to drink but didn't want to break the law or pay as much as they were charging for actual cocktails. So Orange Crush Dry was like probably Orange Crush, but a little bit yuckier. So it seemed like you were drinking a cocktail. It's kind of like why Diet Coke works as a good substitute for a cocktail sometimes. There's just a little bit of yuckiness to it. That almost makes it approximate the feel of drinking a cocktail. So let's start in on some Chicago Art Deco. We're going to start right in on the biggest one. Probably our own finest example. Gorgeously lit up, the Board of Trade, 1930 Holla and Root, the successor firm to Holla and Roche that did the Marquette Building a few blocks away. This is one of my absolute favorites. It's got such a great Gotham City look about it. In fact, it was the Bruce Wayne Building in Batman Begins. Here's how it appeared on the cover of the Chicagoan when it was brand new. And you can also see it does get narrower as it gets taller there following the ordinance from 1923. Here it is during the day. I don't think it's quite as cool during the day as it is at night. Man, I love the way that looks at night. And this is taken during Ovarian Cancer Awareness Night. That's why month. That's why we've got the series up top, all decorated in, all lit up in blue. This is the statue on top. It is Cyres, the Roman goddess of grains and agriculture. Now, you will notice looking at it, it doesn't have a face. There's some urban legends about this. Some people say that John Story, the sculptor, decided not to put any facial features on it because nobody was ever going to build a taller building than this, so it didn't really matter. No one would be able to see it anyway. Now, they were already building much taller buildings in New York at the time. This was the tallest in Chicago until the 1950s after it was built. But in New York, they were already working on things like the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building, both of which were much taller than this. But there was a quote from John Story. He did say something to the effect of, as far up as it's going to be, most people won't be able to see the features very well anyway. So really just leaving it nice and clean like this probably made it look better and also fit in with the Art Deco, the whole streamlining things that was common at the time. So there's the face. This is also said sometimes to be tied into the design for the Oscar, which came out about the same time. There are also some statues up on the top, some reliefs carved by a guy by the name of Alvin Meyer. And once again, you see these guys looking, we don't really see the legs, but the suggested legs make them look very tall. As you see here, this is in an elevator that I can't remember the name of. It might have been the Carbide and Carbon building. But once again, showing very tall people. Or this ad for Marshall Field and Company from the Chicagoan. Which again, somebody with very, very long legs. We see a bit more of that even way up on the north side of the top end of Lakeshore and Sheridan at this building on Loyola's campus. This is by Fisher and McCarthy from 1930, same year as the Board of Trade. By the time it was the Mundeleins Women's College, which features a couple of statues itself. These are said to be named Uriel and Jophiel, and Jophiel. Never sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but look at the pattern there. It's a very Great Gatsby-looking pattern on the grill there. There's simple geometric artwork and simple geometric patterns that are really the hallmarks of Art Deco. Also, these guys look like they have, Uriel and Jophiel there, look like they have very, very long legs. Always emphasizing the height. Yeah, no one was ever overweight in the Art Deco era, except for Al Capone. One of the greatest in Chicago is back behind the Drake Hotel, which is almost Art Deco. But back behind it, all gorgeously lit up here, is the Palmolive Building. Holabird and Root 1929. Holabird and Root were really kind of the rock stars of Art Deco in Chicago. Here's a shot of it during the day. Still has, once again, that streamlined verticality and getting narrower as it gets taller. Contrasts really nicely with the John Hancock Building there. And this one has been capturing people's imagination for quite a long time. There was a photographer named George Henry High who took a picture of it one night with what was called the Lindbergh Beacon up on the top. Now, this was a beacon that was said to be so powerful that you could read by it in Wisconsin. It would spin around a lot, which at the time was okay because there wasn't another building that tall anywhere nearby it. But as buildings got taller and it started shining into people's windows, it created some more problems. But people did test this out. Some guy went out in a helicopter and flew about 30 miles out and managed to get in the beam of the light and said, yeah, he was in fact able to read by that light. It was kind of a popular thing for a little while there in the late 1920s, early 1930s to have these massive beacons up on top of buildings. Partly because, airplanes, commercial airplanes were getting to be a thing too, and nobody wanted to crash into the buildings. There's another shot of it from about the same era, contrasted with the water tower. At a time when this was the Magnificent Mile, the large buildings around there hadn't really come up yet. Just to the right would be where the Hancock Building would eventually be. It was a parking lot then. In the 1960s, the Palmolive Building became the Playboy Building for a while, and added those lights up on the top. There's a more modern look at it. But still, we're looking up towards the north here. Around the same time, over in the Midway, over in the middle of the loop, is the Sal Wacker Building, another Holabird and Root joint. Once again, it's got this whole light well here, kind of shaped like a throne. We used to have some jokes about it being shaped like a throne back in the days, back in the Ghost Tour days. Here's a nice shot at it at night. This is another common thing. Electric lighting had gotten so much more powerful and more popular that having these lighting schemes to light up the building was something that was really newly popular when Art Deco buildings were being built. Kind of gaze up at this from the river. The solemn-looking guys walking down below. And Heather, yes, the beacon is still there. In fact, it's still it only points out into the lake now. And I don't know if it's as bright as it used to be, but it's still there. It's off and on. They still use it. There's an Instagram shot of this one. And here's a view of it from the old Chicagoan magazine. You can see at the top of this one, there is also a beacon. And this one is definitely all the way gone now, but there was one up there called the Sunflash Beacon back in 1930. And this was designed a little bit differently. It used not just the high-powered lights, but a lot of curved mirrors that allowed it to be incredibly, incredibly bright. And This one, in fact, was said to attract people all the way as far as Ohio. There was a pilot in Toledo who said that he flew up in a little private airplane, saw this light way off in the distance, and followed it all the way from Toledo, all the way across Indiana, to the Sal Wacker Building. Of course, this also created a couple of problems. Birds used to fly right into the thing quite a bit. Bats also flew into the thing quite a bit. They said they were sweeping up about 3 birds a day. The Sal Wacker Building, of course, this being the 1930s, it would almost be a shame if it didn't have a gangster story. It was the place where Frank the Enforcer Nitti was shot. He was the guy who took over for Capone when Capone went to jail. Shortly thereafter, they were operating out of a room on the 7th floor. The cops busted in, shot Frank the Enforcer Nitti up pretty good. Doctors were able to save him, though. It's an interesting thing that if gangsters thought they might be getting shot at, they always made a point of not eating anything so the doctor could operate sooner. I don't know how much that's an old wives' tale. I also don't know why Nitti thought he was going to be shot that day, because this was kind of a surprise raid. Now, right across the river from this, just a little bit further west, we'll take a quick look at the Merchandise Mart by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. Ernest Graham is the same guy who did the Equity Building in New York about 15 years before this one. Now, this is from 1930. It was originally supposed to be Marshall Field's wholesale showroom, which is really where they made most of their money in those days. The wholesale was way more profitable than the retail shop itself. And this one, I always say it doesn't look flashy enough to really be Art Deco during the day, but then at night when they get it lit up, it's a different story. And of course, now they've taken things one step further and added art on the Mart. I'll show a quick clip of that here. Such a neat thing to do. I feel like they could project an Atari game up there. And you could sign up for your turn to play Yar's Revenge. Now, as we go further into the loop, there's one of my absolute favorite Art Deco buildings is very rarely seen or noticed. Because you only see it from a distance, really. It's got the train tracks going right in front of it. But if you look in the background there, rising up above the other buildings, what you're seeing is the Trustee System Services building. This is by Thielbart and Reed from 1930. The best way to really get a look at it is to go to the parking garage next door, take the elevator all the way up to the roof, and then you get a fantastic view of an Art Deco building. It's about the closest you can get to really seeing it in all of its glory. Now, they used to advertise the Skyline restaurant, a lunchroom that they had in there, which now almost invariably in marketing materials for the building, it's residential now, they love to say that there was a speakeasy there. The Skyline restaurant was a cafeteria. There's no evidence whatsoever that it was a speakeasy. Now, down, if you get a little bit closer, we see variations of the Caduceus, which is a Greek symbol, 2 snakes wrapped around a winged serpent, which is a symbol of commerce. It's frequently used as a medical symbol these days. It's supposed to be 1 snake for medical, 2 snakes for commerce, but we use 2 snakes for medical all the time in this country. Now, down below, if we get lower on the Trustee System Services building, we find all of these things about the history of credit. And all these little sayings like thrift makes a man wealthy, etc. It's like all these things that make you really feel like they're about to tell me to cancel my Netflix subscription so I'll be able to buy a house. Things like, credit moves the modern world. Life punishes the thriftless. And then over at the front window, if you go into the lobby, they got these fantastic Gene and Gwen Lux designed iron frescoes. And when the train is going by outside, it almost looks like it's animated. This is by Ed Gibson. Gene and Gwen Lux did the frescoes. Now, for all their talk about being thrifty and having wise business sense, Trustee System Services went out of building a couple of years after this building was built. They shouldn't have had all that avocado toast. We'll move out of the city a little bit, because I just want to show off a little bit. Bloom High School down in Chicago Heights. This is such a fantastic Art Deco style building. And on the inside, they've got these fantastic art WPA murals showing various industries that high school might prepare you for. I'm glad they've kept them around. I wouldn't blame them if they tried to do something else with them, because frankly, the people in the frescoes in no way look like the student body today. But still, they're a piece of history and they're really cool art. Well, let's move back downtown. And when they put up Block 37, one thing they couldn't quite get rid of is some more Art Deco artwork. This is the old ComEd power station with this fresco on it called The Spirit of Electricity by Sylvia Shaw Judson, who shows up occasionally on my Graceland Cemetery tour. She's buried at Graceland, is probably best known for carving the Bird Girl statue. This is on the cover of the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. But electric companies, I find, tend to have a lot of fun with this. This shows like this giant wearing only a loincloth. I'm glad he's got the loincloth on, with a cool skyline behind him and holding up bolts of electricity. And we see similar stuff. You might remember last week when I was in New York, we did a walking tour, morning mini tour, where we went up to the old General Electric building that I absolutely love. And this one, way more so than any Chicago building, is that ziggurat shape that gets a lot narrower as it gets taller. In the middle of it, there are all these figures that were kind of hard to get a good look at due to construction. But once again, we see this lightning bolt motif. Elsewhere in the loop, we can go down and check out the Chicago Daily News building by Holla, and Root from the 1920s. 1929. They were doing a lot of stuff in 1929 at Holla, and Root. Very busy time period for them. Now, this was the old Chicago Daily News newspaper building, one of the first skyscrapers to have a public walkway out front with these really cool designs like this face. See how much bigger I can make this. There we go. There's another. Alvin Meyer did these ones. Same guy who did the frescoes over on the Board of Trade about the same time. And what they've got here is also all these frescoes about the history of printing. Notable famous printers from the old days, including some who were big rivals of the Daily News back in the day. We got Pulitzer over there from the New York World. Medill from the Chicago Tribune. Notably not Wilburev's story of the Chicago Times, thank goodness. Benjamin Franklin. And these stylized Art Deco griffins. You see a lot of griffins in old architecture. Victor Lawson of the Chicago Daily News. Horace Greeley, a New York publisher. I think he was the New York Tribune. It wasn't the Herald. The Herald sucked. Entertaining, but it was awful. Let's get another view looking up. Here's how it looks from across the river. It's sometimes been described as like a cubist version of the Sphinx. Which I think is kind of neat. He's got the two paws out in front. And on the inside, you can still see things like the old directory are still there with this very Art Deco-looking grill work that kind of looks like curtains being pulled aside. I suppose that's the polite way to describe it. And right across from there is the Chicago Civic Opera Building, which is kind of like a mixture of Art Deco and Beaux-Arts style. You didn't want to be too modern with an opera house, I guess. Back in 1929, Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. But we'll go around to the front. In terms of shape, it's Art Deco. A lot of the stylings on it are a little more Beaux-Arts, neoclassical. But even then, they're sometimes updated. Like, we've got this whole front row of it here with these columns. Now, there's a few basic types of columns. There's your Doric column, which looks like this. Ionic looks like this. And then Corinthian, which I once had a teacher describe as a crazy pineapple column. What we've got here is kind of an Art Decoized version of a Corinthian column. You see, kind of match it up there, but it's more streamlined. More of an emphasizes the verticality a little bit more. And I will point out, Civic Building has the best message board signs in the business. We're not on mute. Visit us online. One time they were doing Carmen and said, "Carmen, bringing sexy back." So we were building Art Deco into pretty much everything in 1929, 1930, including the old Chicago Post building, which was later the Chicago Sun-Times building, with, again, kind of a stylized version of those columns. These particular ones, they don't have any top at all. It's that streamlined, but also some Art Deco decorations down below. And this is still by far, there have been 3 Chicago Sun-Times buildings. This is still the best by far. Down the block, Vistham and Burns, Tacoma building. The site of the old Tacoma building, now the one Lasalle building. It was built on the site of this one, the Tacoma, which was really cool looking, I think, but kind of unwieldy. And this one is much more streamlined. And then on the inside of this, we got some fantastic elevators. Once again, very skinny people with very long legs. Here's an original rendering of it from the landmark paperwork. Almost looks like a cash register. And just down the block from that is the Field building. One of the last really great Art Deco buildings we put up in Chicago, 1930, right before the Depression put a kibosh on a lot of construction. Here's a look at it looking up. See all the long vertical lines. Now, this was built on the site of William LeBaron Jennings' home insurance building, which is generally regarded as the very first modern skyscraper, the first one to have steel frame construction that allowed buildings to get so much taller. Now, a lot of these old buildings have like a secret club, or a gentleman's club or something like that, or a club room built in. This one has one called the Attic Club up on the top. And here, this is the stairway to get into it, which almost looks like a slide to come back out of it. This was designed by David Adler, who shows up sometimes on the Prairie Avenue tour. Here's how it looked in the original rendering. And I promised there would be at least one murder. This is a building that comes up on the Architecture of Mysterious Chicago tour. In the 1950s, there was an insurance office in here where they would have a contest to see who could sell the most insurance. One guy was ahead at the end of the month, so another guy, Mr. Habenicht, sold a whole bunch of insurance to himself. Look at this guy. Does he not just look like a guy who would cheat an insurance contest by selling insurance to himself? Turned out it was a good thing he did, because the guy he then beat in the contest was so mad that he shot poor Walter to death. I've never figured out if they actually had to pay out the policy on him. There was probably a grace period. Move over to over closer to the lake. This is a very cool one here. Holla Route from 1928. Fairly early for Holla Route. This is the Chicago Motor Club building. And this is something you actually see quite a bit in Art Deco, is working in tires, working in automobiles. And this was specifically for the Motor Club. You can see the logo here above the door with very Art Deco, almost Art Nouveau stylings. The lobby looks about like this. An old car. Let's look at this in a bit more detail. Once again, if you look on the balcony here, it almost looks like they're doing stylized versions of tires, which you see quite a bit. Down on 55th Street is the Ritz Garage building, now known as the Deco Arts building by Louis Croman. We'll just move in a bit closer to this. This was a parking garage in the 1920s, at a time when luxury cars, flashy-looking cars, were really just starting to take hold. So if you look here, look at these this tire-looking style, which is very similar in a lot of ways to the Chrysler building back in New York, which is also supposed to look like a pile of tires up at the top. Let's take a look at some of the inlaid artwork that they've got there, showing very cool 1920s cars. Once again, that was still a kind of a new idea at the time, so it was very, very modern to work this stuff in. But even at the same time as they were doing modern stuff, people in the 20s were also super into ancient Egypt, thanks to the discovery of King Tut's tomb. So you even started seeing things like this, the Laramie State Bank, out in Austin. 1929 by Meyer and Cook. It hasn't been a bank in many years. You know, there's presently like a banquet hall, a furniture liquidator, a deli. There's occasional talk about turning it into a community center or something like that. But on it, you've got a lot of hieroglyphics, a lot of bank stuff that kind of reminds me of the frescoes at the Trustee System Services building. Then on the side, it continues like this with things that are technically eagles, but kind of look like scarabs, like you would see in an old Egyptian tomb. And that kind of continues as well up to one of the more famous Egyptian revival buildings in Chicago. Reby Moving and Storage on Clark, just north of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre site. Move a little closer in here. Reby Moving and Storage. Which even has some hieroglyphics which are supposed to say something like, "I will guard your furniture." And up above, we've got some scarabs and a caduceus. The two snakes and the winged staff. You don't actually see the staff in this one. Or if it is, it's very decorative. But Art Deco even worked its way into things like funeral homes in the 1920s. Like Grain Funeral Directors here. And I wonder if they're going to be able to hang on to that sign here. Because here's the thing, Chicago's apparently got some new rules about overhanging signs, so we're losing some, like the Orange Garden Chop Suey sign on Irving Park, a few blocks west of Graceland Cemetery, goes back to the 1940s, considered Art Deco, even though it's the 40s. But this one was just sold at auction the other day for about $17,000. It was included in the auction with Chicago Joe's neon sign. The Dinkle's Bakery neon sign is going to be auctioned off to benefit Misericordia. So we're losing a lot of these. Like, apparently Chicago's put in a new rule charging more for having signs that overhang the streets. I wish somebody would just buy all of them and put them in an alley. That'd be a really cool, like, selfie spot. It would be a much better place to take tourists than Navy Pier, the Neon Sign Alley. That would be super cool. I think this sold for $17,000. We can also see some Art Deco over in the West Loop area, with the Richter Food Building, which is which has one thing that you don't see a lot on Art Deco, which is color. Most of them are fairly beige or silver in color, but this one works in a few more, and of course a more famous example of that is the Carbide and Carbon Building. Up here on Michigan Avenue. Burnham and Burnham, Daniel Burnham's sons, designed this one. For years I thought it was an urban legend that it was supposed to look like an Art Deco champagne bottle, but there is a diary entry. It was modeled mostly on the American Radiator Building overlooking Bryant Park in New York, but one of the Burnhams did say in a diary the builders wanted it to look dark green like an old champagne bottle. Here's how it looks at night, with this cool awning. Even the cool door, the CNC. It's been a number of different businesses over the years. Recently, the Hard Rock Hotel, that I think was going to be St. Anne's Hotel. But they've still kept a lot of the old touches like Carbide and Carbon and the Double C's. But once they started adding in color, I suppose it was probably just a matter of time before things got a little bit different. Now, mostly what you see is simple geometric art and lots of straight lines, sharp angles. But then you've got the First Church of Deliverance down on the south side, which gets a little bit curvier. And really, when Art Deco started curving, then it started becoming what we call streamline moderne, or art moderne, the style that came right after. This is what's left of the Esquire Theater. To one point looked like this. You can see it still has that Art Deco vibe, but a lot more curves. We can show a bit more of that. Where our Streamline Moderne really took over from Art Deco was in 1933, where it started to anyway, when we had the Second World's Fair here in Chicago. There's actually some color footage of that, so let's check that out.
Here we are, folks, at Chicago's world-famed Century of Progress.
More color,
the spectacular fair that was started by a beam of light from the Star Arcturus. No less than 22 millions of them came swarming into this colossal show to witness the brilliant handiwork of its modern, unparalleled ingenuity. They create a picture that enthralls the eye with their sweep and majesty, a gorgeous climax to this vista of blue-green lagoon. The hope of design made real. Mingling with the brisk tone of modern America, we find, too, the spice and flavor of the foreign.
Moving in the 1950s.
Once it was Ferris wheel, but today it's the towering sky ride that offers the major thrill of the fair. Traveling across the lagoon, one saw far below the fairgrounds in a molten glow of brilliance.
Cars there.
Blues and reds and greens and yellows, all fused into a blazing kaleidoscope of color. Here's King Kong himself and two of his gentle playmates entertaining the midway crowds. And now we come upon a most unique structure, the Travel and Transport Building, presenting a dominant phase of industry in its most commanding aspects, a triumph of architectural design and balance. And here is transportation in its most modern, thrilling expression. The Temple of Champions, with its clean-cut lines and splashing fountains, mingling beauty with utility. In the shadow of this modern architecture, crowds come daily to see how cars are subjected to acid tests of endurance. This miniature track, with its 45-degree side banks and its saucer turns, is the proving ground of car performance.
Then the rest of this is really just showing them crashing cars on that thing. It's almost like Test Track at Epcot. But alright folks, so that is some Art Deco Chicago. One thing I was going to show is what really came after this. We had modernism. At the same time, though, we also had what is called Space Age Gothic or Ray Gun Gothic or Googie style, like Norm's in Los Angeles or the famous Mel's Drive-In. Places like this, they got a little more space age, mixed curves and sharp angles, got a lot more creative than the plain black boxes of modernism. I'd love to do a Ray Gun Gothic tour in Chicago. There's only a few really notable buildings that have this style, but I bet I could probably find some more. Probably the most notable is the Ohio House near the Rock and Roll McDonald's. But alright, let me go ahead and plug the upcoming tours. Thursday night we are doing Johann Hawk, all the women for Johann go crazy, yeah? And also on the Patreon, we are now doing the H.H. Holmes tier, the $10 a month tier that gets you something from my Holmes archives every week. We're also expanding that to include some cool Johann Hawk stuff, too. Next Sunday, a week from today, we're going to be doing true crime in Chicago cemeteries. I'm gearing up to do a Netflix thing about Capone, and also for a new version of the Rose Hill tour that'll start this Saturday. So I'm going to be in a true crime in cemeteries frame of mind. And speaking of Rose Hill, next Saturday, just under 6 days from today at noon, we're going to be doing the Rose Hill Cemetery walking tour. And a week after that, Grave Robbing 101 in Lincoln Park. Tickets for those are available on adamchicago.com. So everybody, with that, I will quick plug, if you need a Mysterious Chicago sweatshirt, hoodie, etc., they got everything you need over at cafepress.com/mysteriouschicago. And with that, everybody, we will put the Benny Goodman back on and just hang out like we always do. So thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam for Mysterious Chicago Tours, trying to save my poor throat a little bit, but here's Benny. There we go. Thank you, Amy. Tips are accepted over Venmo or PayPal, but your best deal is to sign up for the Patreon. Then you get all kinds of cool stuff. Einbed Maalisa. Thanks, Nancy. I'm still not really clear if Facebook is ever going to send me the money for the stars. I wish I could just take off the link to them, but they won't let me. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you, Dana. See you tomorrow, Todd. I was thinking if I don't feel much better tomorrow, I might give myself a day off from Mural Monday. I'll probably be okay. Because I know next Monday I'll be on a plane. What do I suggest for reading? I don't really know of a really good Art Deco book that I could recommend. I kind of go through an article at a time. Thank you, Kathy. Katie, that's awesome. I saw you signed up for it too. I assumed John was coming.
And that would put rhythm in the feet of a wooden Indian. That was the bugle call rag, Benny Goodman's own arrangement. Now, the popular tune, Thanks a Million.
Audrey, yeah, there will definitely be a new shirt for Mystericon. I just haven't gotten to it yet. It still seems a million years away to me. I know it's only 5 months now, or 5 months now. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jenny. Thanks, Larry. Notable residential houses in Chicago that are Art Deco. There is that townhouse by Hollabird and Root in the Gold Coast. And generally, its height is such a big thing for Art Deco that you don't really see it too often in houses. You do see it in occasionally, like there's an Art Deco mausoleum at Graceland. A couple of them at Rose Hill as well. Yeah, Vicky, I took a COVID test to make sure. It's just like weird. It's just mainly just one tonsil hurts. I think I rammed it with a popcorn kernel and then got cayenne into it from eating this Trader Joe's popcorn with 5 flavors, one of which is cayenne. It's delicious, but I don't think I'll eat it again. Thank you, Eugene. I thought I might be strep at first as well, but I talked to a doctor. They said, no, if it's the only symptom you got. It's basically the only symptom other than my usual chronic sinus infection stuff. Thank you for coming, Georgia. Oh, Barbara, that sounds like a fun class. Yeah, they even advertise this popcorn as only the fluffy kind. Thank you, Susan. Carol, sure, there were building inspectors. They could be easily bought, but they did exist. And the weather, I'm sure, is a contributing factor. You know, last time I went to a proper ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, they went with something that went way up my nose, and he used cocaine as local anesthetic. It worked. I didn't feel a thing. all over town. I feel like I should bring Miles over. Where'd Miles go? They were both on the couch earlier. Let me bring him on out. Yeah. I don't want to get cat hair on this right before I take it out to New York.
Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Well, Priya is busy relaxing, still trying to find Miles. Wait, what was that joking about? Kind of cool with it. Cooling by the radiator, you know. Found him. You got to make your appearance. Alexander, I think I've seen that one. You know, when Smart Alex Guide to History came out, we did a whole video like ways to make history come alive. We had Aiden saying, "My teacher's sending me to work in a coal mine. No school!" If you really want to make history come alive, you know, go to we'll come to your school, dig a trench outside of it, and lob mustard gas at your students. Or if you have students with drug problems, take them to a Civil War reenactment when they're high. History will come alive, but they will never take drugs again. Now, Miles was awake, he was just relaxing. Priya is now back on the couch. She tends to bathe while I'm doing these tours, so we can all watch and her beauty in the moonlight will overthrow us.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago and dance some more to Benny Goodman and his orchestra and hear Helen Ward sing. Eeny,
Katie, I would think so. My dare cop turned out to be a meth dealer. Oh, speaking of cat relationships, I got a text, a very excited text from our upstairs neighbor saying the cats are having an all-day hump fest outside. You know, the outdoor feral cats. They're like, you gotta come watch. And I just got there in time for the aftercare. Miles does seem like he's up to something here. You know, he's a little bit sleepy for jumping. But they let me know when they want to jump. See you, Laura. Here comes Miles, yep. Marie, they might be for all I know. But they haven't been. These were ones that we hadn't seen around before. You know, we got a big park behind us, so. Nancy, I can't wait for you all to see the Graceland book. Just a few more months now. Oh yeah, it's May. I gotta pay the rent. So let me just do that while I'm thinking about it. Say hi to the grandkids, Dana. Nancy, thank you for signing up for the Patreon.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Benny Goodman presenting Madhouse.
Amy, we'll definitely do some kind of event when the Graceland book comes out. Right now, I got to get through spring before I start thinking summer. I have a good time in Dallas, Kelly. All right, my rent is paid for the month. Incidentally, the ticket tier, the $20 a month tier that gets you a free walking tour ticket every month, it's actually a better deal. You know, you cut the Eventbrite fees and everything. There are a few slots open for it. I don't have too many open at any given time. Just a matter of paperwork. Oh, I need the vest that goes with this. There we go. Both Paul and John rocked this look during the Get Back sessions. You seen that video going around of McCartney's new tour where he sings along with John's video doing I Got a Feeling? Stunning. I see Harley. Yep, Priya's still watching up back there. Have the cats shredded my sofa? Yeah. Only this one, they haven't messed with the other one. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, the rest of the day is just going to be resting. Katie, yeah, we took. I took Aiden to the concert at Tinley. Oh yeah, the Dillon Center, the archives are opening in Tulsa next week. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a TV special about it. There's also Dylan's social media has teased something coming out next Friday. looks to me like just another career-spanning compilation. Plus, it's been announced that he's recorded a bunch of old tracks. This was probably the Shadow Kingdom sessions that T-Bone Burnett is going to put out as some new kind of better-than-vinyl. Hopefully you won't have to buy the hardware to hear it. His sales pitch for it, Burnett's sales pitch for it is a riot. It's like, yes, sir, your old record player is going to be gone with the hogshead, cask, and demijohn, gone with the pickle barrel, sugar barrel, milk pan. Well, all right, everybody. That wraps up Benny Goodman, so it's probably time for me to wrap up as well. Once again, Adam Chicago or PayPal, adam@mysteriouschicago.com. Patreon, of course, is your best deal. But upcoming tours include... Next Thursday, Johann Hock, all the Vinman for Johann Go Crazy, yeah? Then Sunday, a week from today, True Crime in Chicago Cemeteries. Right before that, next Saturday, Rose Hill Cemetery in person. I'm going to redo that tour a little bit this week. And a week after that, Grave Robbing 101 in Lincoln Park. So thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours saying stay safe, stay strong, stay streamlined and vertical, and stay spooky.